Welcome, everybody, to the Brian Foltis Behavioral Finance Podcast. My name is Dr. Brian Foltis, and I'm an associate professor of finance at Butler University in Indianapolis, Indiana, USA. And my goal is to teach you about behavioral finance and hopes that you make better financial decisions and otherwise better decisions in life. Today, we are going to continue our introduction talk about what the behavioral finance course is about and provide a little bit of foundation to what we're going to be learning about in this particular podcast. And that's how I'm starting the podcast out, going through this course as if I were to teach my undergraduate students about behavioral finance, which I do every semester. So you'll notice the first umpty podcast that we're going to have is going to be me in my home office here this summer, outlining the behavioral finance course. And then we're going to just see what this will morph into and try to get some guests on. I'll try to be guest speakers on other podcasts. We'll do deeper dives into other conversations. So right now, again, we're just laying that foundation for a lot of these topics. There's a lot to cover. And I haven't seen anybody, I see a lot of people talking about psychology of money and different things, and they dabble at different topics, and I always find that really interesting. But I am trying to set out to lay it all out there. So all the coursework is out there, and then we can pick the interesting spots to do a deeper dive into. That means we are looking at today, we're going to finish our conversation on prospect theory. So how we got from expected value to expected utility to now prospect theory. And then we're going to begin our conversation around market efficiency. So remember, we've got psychology of money on one side, and then we have market efficiency or challenges to market efficiency on the other. So behavioral finance, in my opinion, when I define it, it's kind of double-pronged. So a lot of the time we are going to spend talking about biases and heuristics and really thinking about our behaviors around this. But we will also spend a little bit of time talking about market efficiency and whether or not they're totally efficient or we need to really sort this out. So there's a whole conversation we want to have around that. But nevertheless, today I'm excited to get into it, rocking the Dortmund BVB hat. That's my soccer team. So when we talk in this particular course, we talk about decision making. And sometimes if you sum all of this up, if you think about this, we are a sum of all decisions we've ever made. Good, bad, big, small. We are today, right now, a sum of all decisions we've made. So then, of course, it does make sense to think about how we can make better decisions in life and in finance to make our lives better. But I bring that up because when I moved to Germany for the first time to play basketball, we moved into this little town called Wulfen, and it's kind of near the Netherlands border, and got there, flew in the morning, overnight flight, flew into Dusseldorf in the morning, picked us up, took us to our place. We had a flat. I got married when I was 21, and so we were married for a year, and my wife got married when she was 20. So we both graduated college and moved to, this is my ex-wife now, moved to Germany together. And so we had this little flat right above the owner's house. So we got all of our stuff parked in there, and we went to this bakery just to get something to eat because I had to go practice later that day. And I'll never forget that first time in that German bakery where nobody spoke English in this little village, and you were literally reduced to a grunt, trying to pick out what you wanted to eat for your bakery because you hadn't eaten all day. But the first week when we were there, people kept asking over and over again, who's your soccer team? Who's your soccer team? Who do you like soccer? Who's your favorite? I'm going, man, I never really played soccer, didn't really watch soccer, but since we're living here in Germany, we better figure this out. So we let this go for a week. I don't know. And basically, it came down to two teams that were predominant in this area, and it was Schalke or Dortmund. And I didn't really know, or frankly, really cared about any of this stuff. And so I saw there was an old replay Dortmund game that I happened to watch on TV one night because we only had one English channel and on TV at the time. And internet wasn't the where it was back in 2003. So I said Dortmund. I'll be a Dortmund fan. And little did I know that that was going to be such a significant part of my life for the next 20 years. This was the decision made literally 20 years ago. And now, after living there for 6 years, you watch a lot. It becomes a part of your life and you start learning a little bit about it. And then, of course, my kids started playing soccer as soon as they could walk, because that's just what you do when you live in Europe. And they were growing up for their first years in life right there in Germany. So we now are huge Dortmund fans, and I happen to be living in Dortmund, or living in the area when Dortmund won the Bundesliga in 2011, 2012. That was 11 years ago, and that happened to be, the last one happened to be coincidental with my final basketball game I ever played, and it happened to be in Dortmund. So my buddy and I stayed in Dortmund, and we partied after that game and took the drunk train home at about 1:30 that night. But anyway, as I'm recording this, Dortmund is up by 2 points with one game to play. So the door is open for them to actually win their first championship in about 11 years, since Bayern has been taking over that spot virtually every year. So it's pretty exciting. I'm excited. I'm wearing my Dortmund stuff. My boys are super excited about this as well. And in Münster, in the University of Münster that I went to, we also became Preußen Münster fans, which, again, just a small little decision, but we started going to all of these third league games for Münster, and we would stand every other Saturday. I would take my oldest, because he was like 5 at the time, take my oldest, and we would stand in the curve with all the ultras. So all the, I guess people sometimes call them hooligans, and we would stand with them every other Saturday when they had a home game. I would pay $8 because I had like a student pass, and the kid would be free, and we would do that every Saturday. And Preußen moved down to the 4th league, but now they moved up into the 3rd league after winning the league. So hopefully, we're so close to having this perfect dream soccer season. But again, it all comes back to really these, what we thought were inconsequential little decisions that kind of panned out, because if we were Schalke fans, then I probably wouldn't be talking about soccer, because I think they're about to get relegated, or really close to being relegated again this year. But it all plays out over time. I like Dortmund based on the concept that they don't have a ton of budget, and so they can't just spend and buy players out. They have to kind of buy low and sell high. So they get a lot of talent, cultivate the talent, and then they have to sell them off when they demand too much money. But I kind of like that. They have to play the underdog role more or less, and they've really have been successful doing that. Anyway, we are going to continue this conversation. Expected value, the way we usually calculate expected returns, and it is nice and straightforward, and we still teach this in our finance classes. But the issue that we saw with the St. Petersburg paradox in the previous podcast, if you haven't listened to that, please do, is that not all additional dollars are created equal. Just as if I was giving a college student $10,000, how much happier that would make their lives going from 0 to 10,000, rather than an incremental $10,000. If I gave $10,000 to Elon Musk or Warren Buffett, that would not provide as much utility or happiness to them as it would for the college students. So that's what we said. Not all dollars are created equal. It's not a straight line when it comes to additional dollars and happiness. In fact, it starts steep and then it flattens out over time. And so we said, okay, expected utility. If we use a natural logarithm for our function, we can contribute and calculate wealth. Well, now we can work with that, and it's a little bit more realistic to how real investors behave. But then we said, wait a minute, we have a major violation here. And one of those major violations is the gains and losses. So gains and losses are treated differently. So we had that coin flip where you could win $101 or lose $100. And most people won't take that. And the average investor needs $225 just to put their $100 at stake. So their loss aversion coefficient is about 2.25 times, which means they feel their losses 2.25 times as much as they enjoy their gains. So today we've got two more violations that I want to talk about. And in addition to gains and losses being treated differently, I want to throw out a decision here for you. I've got decision number 1. Gives you a 61% chance of winning $520,000. Or that would be 1 or 2. The other option for this decision is to have a 63% chance of $500,000. Pretty generous here. There we go. 61%. It's going to be $520,000. The other option is 63% of $500,000. Okay, so you can go ahead and make your choice. Let's see what I'm looking at here. Okay. Going to be number 1 here. I'll sacrifice 2% in order to get the additional $20,000. Not too worried about it. Now, I'm going to ask another series of questions, or another set here. We have a 98% chance of winning $520,000, or a 100% chance of winning $500,000. I'll post it here for the viewers who are watching it, and then mentally we have to configure this. If you're listening to this in your car, on the podcast, walking your dog, welcome. 98%, 520,000, 100%, 500,000. Okay. So if I'm looking at this being a real life decision maker, just what I would actually do, I'm going, I want, give me $500,000 guaranteed, and I'm happy camper. I'm walking out the door. So here's what I chose. I'm not sure what you chose, but here's the thing. Are you behaviorally consistent, or did you violate? Did you make a violation here? I made a violation. So the way this was framed, the way this was set up at the very top is 61%, 63%. So you're going to increase your probability by 2%. You are going to give up $20,000 in order to increase that probability by 2%, from 61 to 63. But now we did the same thing in the other decision. We increased the probability from 98% to 100%, and we decreased the payout by $20,000. But in the decision number 1, I actually went for the lower percent, higher number, and then I violated it in the next one by going with the higher percent and lower number. So what we would expect with expected utility or expected value, that we're going to be consistent with our preferences over time. And so in this case, I violated it. I was inconsistent. So why did you do that? Well, this is a framing issue here. The way it was framed made me change my decision. So 61% to 63%, I didn't really care. I'll take more. But when it became a guarantee to 98%, I actually changed my decision making. And so what we say here, this is actually called the Allais paradox. Allais paradox. And I believe it's French, so that's why it's not Elias. Allais paradox. And this says, though, that framing leads to violations of expected utility, or maximum expected utility. We violated that. And so we're going to talk a little bit later about positive and negative framing. There's a whole conversation we're going to have in just a couple of podcasts from now that goes deeper into how framing in many different ways can influence our decision-making process and either encourage us to do something or discourage us to do something. And we need to be able to decipher this on our own. That's the purpose of learning this. So that's violation number 2. So far, number 1, gains and losses are treated differently. Number 2, framing leads to this violations of expected maximized utility. And then number 3 is called risk domain specificity. Risk domain specificity. And so what I have my students do is I have the little questionnaire that I have them fill out. And I basically ask them about their risk tolerance in different areas. So what we have to be careful about is making blanket statements, both about ourselves or about others. When we say, oh, well, I need $1,000 to get a coin flip and give up $100. So my risk aversion loss aversion coefficient is 10. I'm a very risk averse individual. Okay, so what'd you do last weekend? I went skydiving. Oh, okay. I thought you were risk averse. Well, we realize there's different domains here. So we try to say, hey, in this domain, I might be more risk seeking, but in this domain, we have to separate these things before we make these blanket statements. And we're going to learn that most of us, if not all of us, have different risk tolerances in these different areas. So what risk domain specificity means is we behave differently as it pertains to risk in different domains. I'm going to lay out some of these domains. We've got 4 major domains, and then number 1 has a split section, so A and B. So it might come down to 5 here. Number 1, this is behavioral finance, financial decision making. Now, we have 2 different subtypes of financial decision making. We have investments, and then we also have gambling. And this is something that we really discuss in class, and I am not shying away from it in any way. In the state of Indiana, sports betting has been allowed for now about 2 or 3 years. And I have noticed this has grown considerably in the area of within my students. And it's not just the students where I thought it would be, okay, well, we've got an issue with the fraternities and the guys talking about it. It's not just the fraternity guys. When I ask people about, hey, how did, March Madness, anybody win money, lose money? Tell me about it. And we build a nice rapport, and I tell them about my stuff. And it's the females who are in the sorority who are telling me stories now and opening up and telling about their stories. So I thought, wow, that's really interesting how spread and grown in just a very small amount of time. And then the more I talk about this, the more I realize I'm up in, the suburbia here, and it's neighbors making big sports bets, and losing a lot of money on sports betting and spending a big chunk of their paycheck on this thing. And so a lot of this time when we're talking about financial decision making, we're going to bring that up and say, look, we've got to differentiate between investing and gambling. And so when we're talking about gambling, this is 50-50 betting, 50-50, and the house takes about 10% through the transaction fees. And you don't even notice the transaction fees, but they're taking them. So if you take one side or the other, there's about a 10 to 12% bid-ask spread, basically, that they're putting in for each. So the house is going to win, and people are going to most likely lose. And so this is a zero-sum game at best. Somebody wins, somebody loses the same amount, and the house takes their cut. And so this is just a loser's game, just like playing roulette is, where you have 36 spots and 2 are for the house and the other ones are 17 and 17. People like it for entertainment. It is a slippery slope, friends. And this is a slope that I've seen a lot of people go down, and they really think that they know what's going on. They're making the money, and we're going to talk about overconfidence in a whole nother section. But this is not investing. This is entertainment, and it is not going to make anybody rich. It'll take you in the opposite direction. And so some people, though, are becoming more risk-seeking through this gambling because they love the dopamine kick that they get from it, and they just become addicted to that. What I try to tell my students is, look, if these guys are trying to, companies are trying to addict you to betting. So they'll give you a ton of free bets, and they'll try to entice you so you start getting that feeling again. And they'll do risk-free bets, and they'll do profit boosts and free bets if you do different things. Deposit bonuses, I've noticed. So I learned this pretty quickly when it first started. Took me 2 strong drinks out on my porch one night, and had my dad juice. That's my vodka and sparkling ice on a Sunday night. Pulled up my computer, and I just started messing around on my Excel spreadsheet. I said, okay, let me see how these probabilities work and the payouts for these different places. And I realized I could just, you can arbitrage these bonuses and the profit boosts and the free bets. So all I would do is I made a little solver thing that said, give me, if I have a $100 free bet, I'm going to take the Vegas Golden Knights for 160, and then I'm going to take the Toronto Maple Leafs on the other side for negative 150. But I've got that free bet, and all I did is I said, tell me how much I need to bet over on the Toronto Maple Leafs in order for the total output to be equal. And so what you learn is I can basically get about, if it's a $100 bet, I can get about anywhere from 55 to 60% out of that risk-free. So you just put it up on the other side, pair it off, put it up on the other side, pair it off, and use the risk-free bet. And you'll, regardless of who wins. So I didn't give a shit who won the hockey game. I just knew I'm going to net $58 and go, okay, give me it again. I'm getting addicted. Come on, give me some more of these free bets or profit boosts. Risk-free bets, like a 2-step process, potentially, if your side loses the first time. But you can pair that off. And so I started using this going, oh my God, they're giving me all this free money. I think they figured it out now because I don't get those promotions anymore. But shit, if you're trying, these companies are trying to get you to become addicted, and they're being successful. Sports gambling is the second biggest increase in addiction, only to opioids in the United States. So I'm not going to probably talk about much more of that, and I'm certainly not going to share any spreadsheets, but just know that if I can do it, you can do it. That you are 2 strong drinks away from making a spreadsheet that can basically arbitrage some of these what are they, bonuses or promotions that some of these places are giving people to get them addicted. So anyway, financial decision making and investment. So in sports betting, you have your risk tolerance. And then in investments, so when you talk about your asset allocation, how risky are you in your asset allocation? And this could actually be different from gambling. And I hope in my mind, what I'm trying to get you to do is to maybe shift that perspective of investments generally rise. All boats float over time. So even if we go back 100 years, we have an average return of about 10%. And on the S&P 500. And you say, well, no, this is different. We've got debt ceiling stuff going on. We've got all this chaos, unrest and things. And I go, I know, I feel it. There's always this risk and we could always take a haircut. However, if we look past the last 100 years, we've gone through World War I. We've gone through World War II. That includes the Depression, the financial crisis, the Cuban Missile Crisis, all these different periods we've still gone through, and it's still increased by 10% per year on average. And so I'm hoping that through the right knowledge and decision making that we can actually have a little more risk tolerance in the area of investments, knowing that it's a game that we all can win over time if we invest for long enough. And gambling is not that we should be gambling. And I think the predisposition, though, is the opposite. We're really afraid to lose our investments, but we don't care because it's entertainment in our gambling. So that's the first domain that we want to disentangle. And then the second one is health and safety. This is wearing a seatbelt or just taking care of our own health in general, where we just know some people are going, I don't really care. I'm going to die I plan on dying when I'm 50. And so I'm just going to treat my body like shit and go down with the ship. And like, that's really, really sad. And so you could be really risk averse in some way and then just don't care about risk in other areas, including how you treat your own health and safety. And never forget even like we're now, 3 years on from the pandemic, and we still have, some people with health issues and still wearing, there's a couple of classes that I would go into that the teacher would make, or I don't know, everyone was wearing a mask in the classes that I was right before I was about to teach. So I would go in after them and everyone had their masks, they were peeling off. And it's like, even then we understand people have different risk tolerances around health and safety. I was, I guess, one that was pretty tentative at first in 2020. And I kind of understood the risks involved and was willing to deal with it. And I paid my dues right up the bat. And then, but I was on I got COVID in 2020 in December. And I know it was from my flight going from Indianapolis down to Fort Lauderdale over Christmas. And so there weren't very many. I got a cheap flight, had a great time, and definitely paid the price in January as I was down. But anyway, we all have to just live with our own risks. Third one, recreational risk. So this is where we go bungee jumping, or we could jump out of an airplane, do skydiving. I had a reservation to go skydiving, was really excited, but realized this was a bit out of my comfort zone. And then it got canceled. I thought, oh, okay, well, we will reschedule it, no problem. Then it got canceled again. And I thought, well, maybe this might be a sign that I'm not ready to skydive. So I haven't done that yet. But I feel like, everyone's going to be different when we do our have our own risk tolerance as far as doing these things. And I like it. I'm not done living yet. Sometimes I have to be careful that I still, I'm a 42-year-old body right now. And sometimes I don't often think about that. So we were just out on the lake last summer and had the tube out there, and my buddy said, all right, get in. And so I did, and he had a brand new 4-engine pontoon boat. And that thing, he got a look in his eyes, and I was done for. And so anyway, I guess I'm a little bit risk seeking in that area, as long as I don't do anything devastating to the older body that I'm now custodian of. Number 4. So we've talked about financial decisions, health and safety, recreational, and now we're talking number 4. This is social domain. So sometimes you could think about disagreeing with somebody, or standing up to an authority figure, whether it's in your job or in your class or wherever. Then sometimes some of us are very timid, some of us are more outspoken than that. Think about going to a party or doing a networking function and saying, well, I'm very aggressive in my investments, but I don't want to meet new people because socially I'm very timid and I'm very risk averse in this area. So we can see all these different areas and domains, and we realize that we're going to be different in all of these. But what we've done is we've created, in my opinion, a fairly full picture now of the 3 violations that bring us into a deeper conversation on prospect theory. So the 3 violations: gains and losses are treated differently, framing leads to violations of expected maximum utility, and then risk domain specificity is that people behave differently as it pertains to risk within different domains. So there's a great example that I'll conclude with that talks about a high net worth financial advisor talking about one of his clients who had $30 or $40 million, wanted to retire early. And so the conversation around that asset allocation was that, well, you want to keep money that is making fixed income for you to live off of. That's not going to be very risky. But then you want to be, you want to keep some exposure in the stock market so it can grow over time, and we can think about generational wealth and that. And the client said, no, that sounds way too risky. I have no tolerance for this. I literally want, all of my money in fixed income. And I said, why? Why do you? He said, well, when I'm out doing my passion, I don't want to have to think about risk. I said, what are you talking about? He said, I want to skydive every day for the rest of my life, and I don't want to have to worry about my money fluctuating back and forth. So I think that's the perfect example of risk domain specificity, where everybody is different, and sometimes it can be an extreme difference from one end to another based on which domain you're talking about. So that will conclude our introductory chapter. When we come back, we are going to open the door to our introduction to market efficiency. Friends, you have any questions, please make sure you send me a note, hit a comment. If you need anything from me, you can reach me at brianfoltis.com. You can find me on Instagram, and I think that's where I'll be posting here for the most part. And let me know how I can assist you. If you would, though, please like and subscribe to this channel, and keep learning with us as we build out our behavioral finance content. So thanks again for watching, and I look forward to hearing from you, and wish everybody a great rest of the day. We'll see you on the next episode. Bye, everyone.